Welcome to the All About You podcast. I am your host, Sheila. On this podcast, I invite guests to share their stories to entertain, educate and inspire you, my lovely listeners. Today's podcast comes under the education category. The topic today is family constellations with family constellations facilitator Brit Netsah. Brit, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Sheila. Thank you so much for having me.
Now, this is a topic I know nothing about. I have never heard of it, so it's definitely an education for me. So firstly, can we explain what is family constellations? And please can we refer to it as FC during the podcast, because I know I'm going to trip over that word. Okay, so what is family constellations?
So family constellations is a powerful and effective systemic therapy method developed by psychotherapist Brit Netsah. It's typically done in a group setting. And in a constellation, we look into an issue together on an energetic level, where we can find the pure image of the underlying tensions, the conflicts and difficulties. And we're then able to access solutions and transform the issue and find resolutions on a deeper level.
Am I right in thinking, for example, mum, dad and 3 children?
Yes, the majority of family constellations are done on the family system, although you can do it on any system. For instance, there is systemic constellations, which is done on a company or any kind of other frame, although most of our issues and problems do come from our mother and father and our family system.
Trying to understand FC myself, does this mean within the family dynamic or in the work dynamic, there are issues, the family or the group have tried to resolve them themselves, and let's say that hasn't gone well, they haven't got the outcome they wanted, they then decide they need to bring in a professional, somebody who understands, someone can give them guidelines and you can help them get a resolution. Is that in a nutshell?
It's less a means of moderation within a situation. It's more about a family member coming with a personal situation. It doesn't have to do necessarily with a problem within the family that is apparent in day-to-day life. It could just be that someone comes for an addiction or a trauma or a specific problem in their life, like not being able to find a job. So you look into their relationship with money, with work, and those relationships are often come to us from our parents. So Sheila, have you seen that classic photograph of an iceberg where it's shown mostly underwater and with only the tip peeking out of the water?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
So in family constellations, our issues and difficulties are like that iceberg. 10% of them are visible in everyday life, and 90% of them are hidden to us, completely subconscious, and we don't see the source of them. So in family constellations, we are able to see this 90%. We can get a really good and clear image of the underlying family dynamics and the inherited patterns that may be a cause of a certain issue.
That is absolutely fascinating what you said about the iceberg, isn't it? This is how we present ourselves to the world, but a majority is hidden.
Yes, and we really carry a lot more than we think from our ancestors and from our family system. There's a lot of unresolved issues and dysfunctional patterns that we inherit. And we just carry it until someone decides to resolve it. It gets passed down to the next generation and the next generation until someone decides to look into it. You know, it's like carrying a backpack full of things, and you keep passing it on to your child, passing it on to the next child, passing it on to the next child, until someone decides to look in that bag and sort through all the old trauma, addictions, illnesses, other dysfunctions, that they can really deal with it and resolve it and stop carrying that backpack for the other family members.
I mean, that's interesting because we often hear, oh my God, she's turned into her mother, or he's turned into his father, or I'm doing exactly what my mother did. Is this what you're talking about, that we are just producing people who are the same as us, including the negatives and the traumas, and we are just passing it down the line and making mini-me's all the time?
Yes, definitely. A lot of times we inherit really good things and traits that make us who we are, but a lot of times it becomes a burden, and that becomes a negative and something that we call entanglements. Basically, until someone decides to resolve an issue, it will just keep being carried on. A lot of them don't manifest in the same way. There are many situations that you would see a clear pattern, like you said, the mother becoming a copy of the grandmother, being a copy of the grandmother, and the child also following that path. A lot of the times it's very unconscious, and it's things that we don't see in everyday life.
That is so interesting, because if we just take a small example, in general, our mothers teach us how to cook. They may teach us how to look after a home, that type of thing. So we learn those non-academic skills from our parents. And then in theory, we then go, okay, well, my mum used to make us eat, potatoes every day. As a grown adult or as a teen, you decide to make your own decisions. You go, I really don't enjoy it. That's not me. But up to a certain point, the parents are controlling the child's life totally until you start to grow and are capable of making your own decisions when you learn more about the world. That is so interesting. I'm sitting here thinking what I know I've taken from my mum and what I've taken from my dad, yeah.
So many things are really on a very deep energetic level, and they're so unconscious to us, We inherit a lot of emotions, ideas, values, beliefs that may not serve us. They may have served our parents, our grandparents, an older generation, but they don't serve us, so it will cause issues in our lives.
Because the thing is, with each generation, the world has changed. So what worked for our grandparents doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for their grandchildren, because the world is just totally different. The world's moved on. The differences are so huge.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, and personal differences as well. Personality also comes into that. So yes, we look into those patterns that keep repeating, and all those inherited emotions, feelings, traumas, fears, illnesses. There is so much that we can carry on from our family system if it hasn't been healed or resolved.
We've got so much to unpick here. Let's imagine we've got the family. What would be a typical issue within a family where somebody would come to you and say, look, I need help?
For instance, we very commonly see an issue where in a situation of divorce, where the child has either taken on or been put in place of the parent that has left the family. And that causes a lot of disorder in the family, because then the child is expected or chooses to take on the responsibility of an adult. For instance, a mother has come to us with behavioral issues of the children after a divorce. And we see in the constellation that the child, her son, was put into the position of the dad, because now the dad is missing, so the son feels a natural responsibility.
So he becomes the man of the house.
Yes.
And that's often, you are now the man of the house.
Yes. And of course that creates a lot of disorder within the family, because the child's job is just to be a child, not to take on the responsibilities of the parent. So there are a few things we can do to resolve that and put the order back into the family system.
Let's take that situation then. Can you talk us through your very first session? Would that be with the mum and the son? So totally going to focus on the divorce situation. Okay, so the boy is basically the man of the house. They both come to you, or would you think...
No, so that's the fantastic thing about family constellation. You don't need all the people that are involved in the issue to come to do a constellation. We only need one person. There are situations when couples come together, or a parent will come to do a constellation for their child. But the majority of times you just come with your issue, no matter who else is involved in it.
Let's use this example though. So we've got the mother, she's divorced the husband, and she's got a son. Mm-hmm. Why has she come to you? What's her issue?
Usually it's to do with her connection to her kids, her authority over the kids, because maybe the children don't listen to her. It makes sense once you go into the constellation, because of course the son was put in a position of authority in the family. So of course he's not going to give the mom the authority, and the mom is not going to feel that she has what she needs in order to lead her own life, as well as to give her children the healthy boundaries that they need.
I mean, I understand that 100%, because as you're saying, he's like, oh, you're the man at the house. But we could be talking about a 10-year-old or an 8-year-old. He hasn't the mental maturity, and neither should he have at that age, to be the emotional support system. Yes, he can take out the rubbish that the father used to do, but the emotional maturity is not that he's a child or a teenager, and they've got their own problems.
That's right. Yes, so typically the mother would come. With a situation like this, we wouldn't recommend the child to be there, because, this is an adult subject, and it's ultimately the responsibility of the mother. The mother would come as the client, and again, we usually do the constellation in a group setting. So you would have the mother, the client, I would be the facilitator, and my only job is to really hold space and to gently guide, but we let the movements and the energy do the healing completely. We then have the representatives, who are strangers, complete strangers to the mother, who is the client, and they will be there in service of her constellations in order to represent different members of the family. So once I've done a short intake with the mother, I would guide her to select representatives to represent herself, the father of the children, and the children as well. And this is where it's pretty incredible, because once she picks out people for these positions, these people, the representatives, will step into the energy of that person. They will immediately feel a shift in their energy. It's something that you can't fully explain until you experience it.
I am fascinated. So, sorry to interrupt you, Brit, but the people who are going to take the place of the mother, the father, and the child, these are other health professionals?
No, complete strangers. Anybody who is willing to be a representative in a constellation. And they don't need to know anything about the situation. And most of the times, which is another really good thing about constellations, there's very minimal talking. We don't go into very deep details about the situation. We really let the underlying energies and the family system show us what is truly happening under the real issue, under what we can see in the day-to-day life.
Silence. I've got this picture of the mother and you and 3 unknown people to the lady, playing her, playing the husband, and playing the child. Mm-hmm. This is fascinating.
Yeah, so basically they will, the representatives will act out the situation on impulse, and it's pretty incredible how precise it is. I very recently had a constellation done for myself, and I picked a complete stranger, never seen this person before, and I constellated her as my grandmother. I asked her to represent my grandmother. Of course, she does not know my grandmother, but throughout the constellation, she was leaning forward, hunched forward almost. It still amazes me when I see this, because my grandmother had a hump and she was very hunched forward. And it's just incredible how the energy of the person can really influence the language that the representative will use and also the body language as well.
How does this unknown person take on the role of the mother or the grandmother? Do you put them under hypnosis or something?
No hypnosis at all. It's just through the power of intention. It is a method similar to psychodrama where you act out the different people or situations and that belong to a specific issue in your life. But no, they don't need any guidance. Again, it is a pretty incredible phenomena that you really have to experience for yourself. Because once you're in that position, in the energy of the family system, you just are moved by the energy and you know exactly where you want to stand, what you want to say, and how to hold yourself.
This is a lot to take in.
I know.
I thought initially it would be, okay, we've got 3 healthcare professionals, and in this instance it's going to be the mother, the child, and the father or the boyfriend, whatever. But it's not. And where do you get these unknown people from?
It's just through advertising, and a lot of people are very willing to come and be in service of a constellation because it can be a very, very healing experience for the representatives. So there are no mistakes in life. You often get picked for a role that you completely resonate with because your vibration matches to that specific role or to that specific dynamic. So for instance, very often if we're doing a constellation about, an issue of abandonment, that a daughter had felt abandoned by her father, very often without anybody in the room knowing, a representative that has also experienced being abandoned by a parent will get picked to play the role of the abandoned daughter. There might also be the other situation where they get picked as the person who abandoned the daughter, and they gain so much insight from it and so much healing from experiencing it on that energetic level.
These sort of unknown people who are participating, as well as helping the situation, they can get help themselves unknowingly.
Yes, you would feel very empowered. You can learn another aspect about yourself, and you can also heal something that is within you, because we all have everything within us. We just need to tap into it. So when you tap into a certain energy or a certain role or position in a dynamic and you get to experience it, you will always gain very important insight, some healing, or even just as a curiosity to understand another person's position that you might relate to or not.
So my understanding, and Brit, please feel free to correct me here, there is an issue that the husband has gone, it's now the mother and the son. He's basically, you are the man of the house, and he's not in that position because of his age. Let's keep it nice and simple. The mother comes along and you have the family dynamic of someone playing the role of the mother, the son, and the father. What actually happens? Do you ask them to role play? Do you give them questions? How does that work?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we all work together by role playing characters and acting out the familiar family dynamics, and we really watch the story unfolding, kind of like watching a living family tree. As the facilitator, I do very gently guide by observing what's happening to see where the disconnections are happening or where the issues are stemming from. And we just watch. What we really watch for is entanglements, as I mentioned before, which are the inherited feelings, attitude, or mindset of another family member that are consciously or unconsciously shaping the life of that person. In this case, the son or the mother. There are multiple dynamics at play. But we basically look for these obstacles that we call entanglements. And what we can do at that point, once we recognize it, we can acknowledge it. Usually we do a specific kind of intervention, what we call an intervention. It's not in the most commonly known way. we usually say a few phrases or words that are very meaningful in family constellations. And we might make a few actions like hugging or moving, or it really depends on the situation. So for instance, in this situation with the mother and the child who's taken on the position of the father, we may need the child to face his father and give him back his position, recognize that he's taken or he has been put in the position of the father, and to acknowledge that. We usually acknowledge the emotions that are there for both people, and we create order by, sometimes it's as simple as having the child say, I'm the child, you're the father, and the father repeating that, I'm the father, you're the child. It takes very simple sentences that are very meaningful to make shifts, as well as very meaningful movements, often hugging or holding hands. And we sometimes physically take something and let the representative give it to the other representative in order to help them give that energy back to the person.
We have the mother and we have somebody playing the role of the mother. Is the mother purely watching herself in theory, or is she actually involved, as in this is a four-person, for want of a better word, play? That's how I'm visualising this.
Yes, the majority of the session, the mother would watch herself in the dynamic, and she would watch it play out from the sidelines. At some point, we may decide to bring her in when we come to the point of resolution, so she can fully experience it in the moment. But for the majority of the time, the client is just watching this play out in front of them.
You said this can work for couples as well as families. You know where I'm going on this one, don't you? So we've got the example of the mother, the father's gone, and the young child is the man at the house. Can we talk about working this FC with couples?
Yes, of course. In relationships, in couples, the majority of the time we are reenacting what we had modeled from our parents. So you will find that when you look into the issue deeply, one person in the family, in the couple, you may be modeling either your father or your mother, and your partner may be modeling their father and mother. And you usually find a person to couple with that perfectly fits with your theme and your sort of disordered issue, so that you may grow together. Because our intention is always to heal what our parents couldn't. It's the whole premise of family constellations, that we always seek to heal what our ancestors couldn't, what our parents couldn't. So we carry it forward, and it's another theme or another pattern that you carry with you into your relationship. So for couples, it's extremely, extremely beneficial to look into their family system and see what patterns they're repeating and how they're using each other. You may be using your partner to model your mother. Your partner might be doing the same things your mother used to do to you. The possibility to heal it, you get another chance to heal what your parents couldn't.
I had no idea what we were going to be covering with this, but this makes so much sense, because when we look back on the relationship between our own mother and father, there's a lot there, isn't there?
Yeah.
Good and bad in my case. But when you talk about the family dynamic, you say, I've turned into my mother always did this, and we think that's very natural, and it can be a very positive thing. She was a good cook, you're a good cook, etc., etc. But as you say, we often, that rucksack is full of a lot of negative stuff, shall we say, as well as the good stuff.
Yes, so that's what we call entanglements, all these kind of obstacles or things we've inherited. Entanglements really come from three main principles that are not in balance. So entanglements happen when one of the three principles are not in balance. So the three very important principles are, if I may share, are balance, order, and belonging. So balance is the balance between giving and taking, mostly between generations. So our family system will always find a way to balance itself out as necessary. And as children, we're very loyal to our parents and to our family system. And that plays a very big part in keeping the family system in balance. So we always want to help our parents, and we're naturally loyal to our whole system. We will always take on things, and we will inherit the energies, feelings, beliefs, and values, and really follow in our ancestors' footsteps in order to keep the balance or resolve issues, like we just mentioned. And we very often find that when a parent has a certain illness or addiction, the child will always also develop that addiction or illness in loyalty for the parent. So for instance, things that we think, that's the reason we think a lot of things are genetic, like certain addictions. We really think they're passed down in that way. But in family constellations, we see that the children are really loyal to the parent, and they want to help them carry that burden of that illness, that trauma, whatever it is. So they will carry on this pattern and follow in their footsteps.
That is so interesting what you say there, because when we are growing up, we know no better than if our parents do this, that's the right thing to do, whether that's a positive or negative. So it's interesting what you say is we think a lot of things are genetic because as a child, what goes on in the family home is normal.
Yes. And it's incredible how much children take onto themselves. And sometimes it doesn't manifest exactly in the same way. So for instance, we did have a client that came in, a teenage girl that struggled with anorexia. And looking into her constellation to see what's the source of that anorexia, we saw that her father was dealing with terminal cancer. And she was essentially helping him carry the load of being sick, of that illness, even though it was manifesting differently. And a reason it was also manifesting as anorexia is because she was essentially sacrificing herself. The child was literally saying, I will die instead of my father, because they want to carry that load. So it's incredible what children completely subconsciously will take from the parents just to help them with their situation.
That is terrifying.
Yes. But we can also find solutions for it once we cut those ties and remind the child, the teenage girl, when we reminded her within the constellation, we could do deep energetic work to remind her that she does not need to carry the load with her father, that her father is capable of doing that, and that is his life journey, and that she can go on freely.
Just sort of backtracking, I've heard the situation when parents divorce, children think it's because they were naughty or they were bad, and that's the reason.
Yes, a child's world really revolves just around them. Their perception always leads back to them until a certain age. They don't have the capacity to think that someone else could have the responsibility. So whatever happens in the world, even a natural disaster or something around them, they will always bring it back to something that they did or did not do.
I think that is absolutely fascinating. We've talked about the lady or the wife, the husband and the child. We've talked about this teenage girl putting herself in the position of she will die rather than a family member. Can we talk about another group of people? Can we talk about husband and wife dynamic?
Yes, of course. So I will add that to the second principle, which is order and hierarchy. Basically, every member of the family has their rightful and unique place, role, and positioning. And correct positioning and order is so important to maintain a healthy family dynamic. So something we see often within married couples is that maybe the wife would take the role of the mother. So you have in relationships kind of a parent-child dynamic. That's very, very common when typically the man will go into a child position and project his mother onto his wife, and his wife will naturally take on that role. Again, they've perfectly chosen each other to be in service to each other in that way. So we see that very often, and that needs a lot of arranging. Again, we need to acknowledge everyone's position in the family. It's so important that people are in the right energetic space so that they can take responsibility for themselves and others in their family. So we would gently guide in the constellation the man to take his rightful place. And possibly in that constellation, we will need to do some intervention with his parents so he can let go of that child position, because something happened there with his parents or his ancestors that he's not able to assume his responsibility as a man or his role as a man in the marriage. And same for the wife who's put herself in the mother's position. There's something there that has happened with her family. Maybe she was given responsibility at a young age. Maybe her parents were children, so she had to parent them. So we'll have to resolve both sides in order for them to really assume their proper roles so that there is order in the family.
I mean, that's a whole topic on its own. Let's go on to the third principle.
The third principle is belonging and connectivity. So everyone is connected in a family system. Every member of the family has a right to belong to the system. And the system will always do everything it can to keep everyone connected. And it's very important that we acknowledge all members of our family system in order to keep them included within it. So basically, people and things that belong to our family system include our immediate and extended family members, of course, our ancestors, long-term caretakers, influential partners, pets. Abortion and miscarriages is a big one that gets overlooked. Victim and perpetrators that were created by our family system. Some people look at past lives as well. That belongs to your family system. Any illnesses or diseases, as well as things like country of birth and culture. Those all belong to our family system. And we all need to include everything about it. You know, for instance, the country that I was born in, I need to include that within my family system because that is a part of me. And the way that system will always keep everything and everyone included is by always bringing back the element that was excluded. So, for instance, a very, very common thing we see with this is with abortions and miscarriages that are not remembered, acknowledged, or honored adequately. That will result in the other children of the family feeling like they're not living a life of their own, kind of feeling like they are energetically living the life of the aborted or miscarried child. So you take on that child's energy. Also for the mother, it can be very distracting because a lot of her energy goes to either hiding or avoiding thinking about the aborted or miscarried child. And that takes a lot of energy and attention away from her children that are there and that need her. So that's an interesting one that we look at, and we look at how to honor and remember the aborted or miscarried child in order to include them back in the family and create order.
This is absolutely fascinating. And we're talking about all the different groups of people and the typical issues they experience, because so many families are what we call blended now, aren't they? From a second marriage, adoption, this type of thing, which can just add another complex layer to the already complex family dynamic.
Oh yes, definitely. We also tend to have a lot of things like black sheep. In the family, there's always someone who kind of sacrifices themselves to repeat a pattern in order to re-include a member of the family. For instance, we had a client, a man that was excluded from his family. He was completely shut out. None of his family members talked to him because of the woman that he married. They don't approve of her. And looking into his constellation, we saw that his great uncle was in the exact same position. He was excluded from the family. He was completely not remembered or talked about. They really pretended like he had died because he chose to marry someone that the family did not approve of. So the son kind of stepped into that energy to re-include the uncle in order for this issue to be acknowledged and resolved.
You do hear a lot about, oh, we don't talk to him because we don't like the wife or we don't like the new husband. And these days, so many people remarry, or even if they don't marry, a new partner, and the family like, oh, well, God, nobody likes her or him or whatever. I should imagine quite a big thing, as much as the blended families is a big. I mean, having the family, mum, dad and 2 children is very different in the world we live now, and relationships changing and people moving around the world. Yeah.
Yes, it does make everything more complex, but also more interesting.
Yeah, but you can see, I mean, we can all think to people we know, yeah, this family, maybe not totally excluding, but definitely, you know, shall we invite them, shall we not? We all hear stories about this type of relationship issue.
Yes. Causes a lot of disorder in the family and a lot of disconnectivity. But we also try not to be too hard on it, because if it doesn't manage to get resolved, no problem. It will just come up again. The same issue would just come up again in the future generations. Of course, we do want to clear the way for our future generations. You know, every parent wants their child to do better and to have better than what they did.
That's an interesting point, isn't it? Because a lot of families, I want you to have the education we never had, which is great, but we don't think about the family dynamics that have gone on before. Mm-hmm. Do we really just want to take that backpack off and go, right, now it's you to carry this around with you every day as excess baggage?
Yes, and we've really emphasized, like a quote I really, really love, and something I use often is, if you want your child not to trip on their life path, pick up the rocks that you've left there.
Oh my God, that is, yeah, that's the title of this podcast.
Yes, so in essence, you know, if you want your children to be free, you need to be free as well. You need to make sure that you're free, and that what you can resolve, that you do resolve.
So we've talked about the 3 principles, we've talked about different groups of people and the type of issues they come with you and how that can be resolved. Where do we go next with FC?
Well, the amazing thing about family constellations is that we work at such a deep level that it can influence and affect multiple areas of our lives. And it can also affect multiple people in our system. There is not really a need to do so many sessions about a specific issue. Most issues can get resolved with just 1 session, the majority of them. And you do need to give a little bit of time after the constellation to let the energies settle. But it's really incredible, because a lot of the times you can get done with 1 constellation what you might do in a year of talk therapy.
Let's imagine then, we'll go back to our mum, the absent father or partner, and the child. Only the mother has come along, mm-hmm. but you have got your 3 participants taking on the 3 roles. They are responding to questions and prompts, and the 4 characters talk it through. Does the mum get a light bulb moment going, oh my God, I now understand what I've been doing, maybe where I've been going wrong? Is that what would typically happen to the mother?
Yes, usually from watching the dynamic, and the facilitator can help explain what dynamics are happening. It would be very clear to the mother, although it's not as helpful to just be aware of it. We still need to make the shifts on the energetic level, because the mother will still go back home to the child and subconsciously try to put him in that position. So the energetic shifts are much more important. In that way, it's really, really nice that we don't need to know it's so many details about what actually happened in the constellation. The mother doesn't fully need to understand it if she doesn't. We're really working on a deep level, and it doesn't always have to be fully understood for the shifts to be made.
Would the mother then go home with a workbook? When you say to the man of the house, you need to do that, instead of saying that, this is what I should say, because he's only 8 years old.
Mm-hmm. Often we would give actionable steps to the clients. A lot of the time you would still see the shifts happening naturally, because we shifted things also for the sun. So the sun will also manifest differently in everyday life, and he would start to lean towards just being a child and less into taking on that responsibility. And naturally the system will find balance, because the mother will also respond to that accordingly, and her position has also been shifted.
So although the child has not been part of this session at all, he will realise and feel the mother is treating him slightly different, maybe slightly vocabulary, maybe the way she's presenting the mother relationship to him, and he will think, oh, something has changed here. So he wouldn't even know his mother had been to FC, but he will sense the shift, vocabulary, her body language.
Yes, he wouldn't need to know anything at all, and in most situations nobody needs to know that you did a family constellation to feel the shifts. That's what's amazing about it. You still see the difference. It's kind of like when you just work on an issue within yourself and you don't share it with anybody, but people can see that you hold yourself differently. They can see that you react differently in certain situations, so it allows them to react differently or hold themselves differently as well in response.
And it's amazing, Brit, when you said this can all work after just one session. I thought you said, oh yes, it could be 6 months, it could take 2 years. One session.
Depending on the issue, we can make some very, very strong shifts in just one session. Some deeper issues or dynamics that have been going on for very many generations, we might need to look into different aspects of them and different sides of them. But yes, the majority of the time I have seen that one session has been sufficient for one specific issue.
It makes total sense, but it's difficult to get your head round if we talk about the mum, the absent father and the child. The child hasn't even gone to the session. The mother is watching 3 random people that are not even family members, not even friends, acting out maybe the dialogue, the body language. And that's enough for her to go, okay, I do that because that's what my mother did to me, or the grandmother did to my mother, and I remember seeing that.
Of course, again, don't forget that we do interventions within the system. Mm-hmm. So right then and there, in addition to seeing the dynamic, we shift the dynamic and we're able to find solutions and reorganize the family system to the way that it would be healthiest for them to function properly.
What have I not asked you about this? I know we have covered a lot, and we've covered several different scenarios with different groups of people. This is an unknown topic to me, and you have blown my mind. What should I have asked you about FC? What have I missed? Is there anything we need to recap over?
There's so many more things that can be said about family constellations. It's really incredible. It's changed my life. I'm so happy that it's come into my life. And as soon as I came across it, I knew that I will always be working with family constellations.
How did you come across? Because I had never even heard of this. How did you discover it?
Well, it was about 13 years ago. I was finishing up my NLP Masters, which is Neuro-Linguistic Programming. And one of my professors told me about this course. And I have never heard of family constellations, but I immediately signed up for it without knowing what it is. It just spoke to my heart. And I've fallen in love from day one. I saw how much healing it has brought into my life and how influential it was for other people as well.
One thing that I love about this podcast is I'm having conversations with people about all different topics. The education I receive is just mind-blowing, because I didn't know anything about this at all. I had a quick swat up. Okay, I understand the 3 principles. I am blown away by how this works, that you can have one family member in and people unknown with her to create the constellation. How it can resolve issues that have gone on for many generations in one session. If I don't know about it, chances are there's a lot of other people who don't know about it. And this is something incredibly powerful. We all came from a family of one type or another. This is incredibly powerful, helping families, individuals, couples. No, how come this is not out there? Because we hear a lot about, take a pill for this and, a pill for that. But this is everyday life with your friends, your family, your partner. This is huge. How come we don't know about it?
It is relatively new therapy method, but it has been gaining traction really rapidly for the past 20-25 years. It's especially popular in Europe and in South America, where there tend to be more cultures that are more family-centric. It's gaining more and more popularity every year, and we have more and more facilitators that are training and offering this. Here in Valencia, we have a lot of people offering it in Spanish, and it's really showing its value recently. There are a few things that may be slowing it down. Evidence and studies that show how effective it is are a little bit low. There is a very, very good study showing the effectiveness of family constellations that was just released in 2021. That is pretty good. But again, a lot of people find that it's not enough because there is not a lot that is documented and followed up with constellations. So I think that's something that may be slowing it down, but people who have gone to constellations can see its value.
I mean, I am just blown away by our conversation here. And I hope if one person listens to this podcast and one person goes to a facilitator and uses this technique, our job is done, Brit. Even if one person, maybe not for them, but for somebody they know, our job is done.
It is a really powerful therapy method. That's why I'm always so excited to share about it, because it's really the way that I see life. It's completely changed my perception. And you can see it in anything. I can spot dynamics between people, and I can tell what is going on in their relationship by their body language, how they hug, how they sit together. You can get a lot of clues through family constellation on what's really going on a deeper level.
Brit, what a conversation. This is definitely educational. I think this has been absolutely brilliant. So, Brit, is there anything that you want to add to our conversation?
I just wanted to add the importance of honoring your mother and father according to family constellations. So in FC, the gift of life is the biggest gift that you can receive in the universe. And that is, of course, given to us by our father and mother. So it's so important that we express our gratitude to our parents and to our ancestors for receiving this gift of life. No matter if your parents haven't been in the past or are not great parents, if they're not present in your life, you can still find a moment to thank them just for the fact that you're here and the fact that you got this gift. A way to balance out that gift that we're given is to pass it on forward and have children ourselves And if we're not able to do that, also to take care of our parents at all age. That also greatly impacts that balance of that gift. So I really urge everyone to do something to honor your ancestors and your family. Light a candle, go visit at the cemetery, say a prayer, take a moment to think about them, or research your family tree. It's so important, and it's such a big part of us.
A great way to end the podcast, Brit. Thank you very much for educating us in FC.
Thank you so much, Sheila. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you for listening to our conversation. Please subscribe for future episodes. It is free. And if you have a story to tell, please contact me on allaboutyoupodcast@yahoo.com and let's tell your story.